Hello, welcome to the Cunning Plan podcast. I'm here with my good friend Miles. This is the second time. If you're wondering, well, no, you wouldn't be wondering it now, but later you'll be wondering, why was Miles wearing different clothes? Not just Miles, me as well. Why are they wearing different clothes at the beginning than they were at the end? And the reason for that is because we recorded an intro for this earlier, and we deleted it. It got deleted. The computer deleted it. We didn't delete it. I mean, we know what we're doing. We're not Muppets. But it was, mistakes were made. People were disciplined. I don't think it's going to happen again.
It wasn't me, by the way.
It wasn't Miles. It wasn't Miles' fault. But anyway, here we are. So we're doing the intro again. The last intro was very good. So this has got a
probably
lot
better than this is going to be.
Well, let's let history be the judge of that, right, shall we? So anyway, here we are. Sorry for the rambling. We're here today to talk about typography. A couple of weeks ago, it was a little while ago now actually, we did a presentation. I say we did a presentation. Miles did a presentation on typography, trying to help everyone get a better handle and a better understanding on fonts and how fonts are made up and how you use type in an efficient way. So what was the reason behind wanting to do a presentation of this sort?
I think at the time or since then we've had a lot of typography projects that have come in, a lot of design projects that involved a lot of type, a lot of body copy, a lot of titles and stuff like that. So I think Chris, who's our creative director, is really good at setting out type, and his knowledge of type is and layout and composition is really good. And I think Chris just wanted to up my levels, up my skill levels on that sort of stuff. And you and Chris wanted me to up that, so I had to go back and learn some of the theory. So we went over a quick brief history of typography, the terminology, the technology, some of where the fonts originated, and then in learning this sort of stuff you get to just sharpen skills going forward, and you know why things do certain things and why you should lay them out in certain ways, certain philosophies in type and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah, it's a really interesting presentation. Do take the time to have a good listen to it. If you're listening, then it's well worth watching some of the slides as well that Miles designed. There's some great slides in there. We're also going to put it up on a SlideShare as well, so you can download those slides and have a look at them properly and everything like that. Cool. It's a really interesting presentation and really made me certainly think about the way we use type and how we choose our fonts and what makes for a good bit of type and what makes for not a particularly good bit of type. There's a few great font-based gags in there as well. Keep an eye out for those. Some quality stuff.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, enjoy the presentation.
Enjoy.
So I'm doing a presentation on typography, hence the shirt. So I'm just going to go through a few basics on typography. So the origins of type. A very important figure was a guy called Gutenberg in 1445. He invented movable wooden type blocks to print type for various things, mainly the Bible, really. Before him, it was just monks and scribes that were able to write. And this meant that literature was basically just for the rich and the educated, which was a problem. So it was only the hierarchy, the higher class that were able to read and write, really. So that was before Gutenberg. And Gutenberg came in and sort of changed the game. He created wooden blocks of print, which meant you could mass produce a lot of things. At the time, it was mainly Bibles that were big. They were the best sellers. So Gutenberg's Bibles were sold cheaply due to effectiveness of the movable wooden type. And by the 15th century, it had taken over European. It just spread across Europe. A lot of the fonts back then were based on the actual monks and the scribes' handwriting. So that was called black letter. It was very blocky, very based on calligraphy, so a lot of ink blotches and stuff like that. Wasn't particularly nice, but got the job done. It was around this time as well that a guy called Jensen invented something called Roman type, which is based on, he worked out of Italy, and it was based on the type that was found on the buildings, in the old Roman buildings. So they were long, thin letters, a lot more legible, and this sort of got introduced into the wood printing and into the Bibles, just so legibility. So that spread it even further, really. It sort of rode the wave of the Renaissance, this wooden print. So as the Renaissance sort of spread across Europe, so did the print, and they sort of tied hand in hand with the spreading of. So as the Renaissance rose, so did the spreading of the Bible, sort of adding fuel to the fire, really, the whole thing. So that was like a major development in the early 15th century. And technology-wise, everything sort of stayed stagnant up until the 18th century. So the early 18th century, like I said, the technology became quite stagnant up until this point. And then in 1822, metal print was introduced. A lot of fonts that are used today, like Dido and Bodoni, were actually designed in 1830. It's amazing to think that Bodoni was designed in 1813 when it's still used today for major campaigns, really. So the wooden press changed to metal press, and there was the introduction of lithography, which is heated metal print. And around this time as well was the first steam-powered press that was able to print a whopping 480 copies per hour. And then again, this sort of kept building, and as all this sort of stuff's going on, you are getting the odd bit of design, type design throughout Europe, but nothing of real importance up until 1886, really, when the lithotype machine was invented. And this was set type, and this was a printing press, hot metal, like I said. And as this was growing, the Industrial Revolution and this, as with the Renaissance, they sort of helped each other. So as the technology and industry rose, so did typography, obviously increasing society through communications and all that sort of stuff. So the thing to get through both the last two slides is that everything that was sort of happening in the world seemed to be fueled by the advancement of type as well, which was quite impressive. And then in the early 20th century, we started to see a lot more creativity. So houses such as the Bauhaus, which is a legendary art and design school, which sort of combined, whereas a lot of schools across Europe were just teaching art or design, Bauhaus combined the two and like to teach the students about technology and new technologies and stuff. So they were very important in a lot of expressionism and stuff like that in the early 1900s. So type was mainly seen as a tool to read stuff, or a tool for legibility, whereas in the early 20th century Bauhaus it started to become a bit more flamboyant. And we started to see movements such as in the bottom left, they're examples of, on the right that's Russian constructivism, and on the left is an aspect of Swiss design. So these two were legendary movements within design that people still copy today, and they've influenced design throughout today. So as this sort of developed, between, I'd say, the early 20th century and now, there's a big hotbed for design, and then obviously in 1990, roughly that time, you got digital design that really took off, desktop design and digital printing as well, which sort of, again, fuels the fire on the digital design front. This is, so I'm going to be talking about the intricacies of certain typefaces. So just odd terminologies that I thought I'd explain to you really before I get into them. So this is like the autonomy of typography. And here we've got three major categories really. Three of the major categories. You've got the bottom one, that's a serif type, the top one is a sans serif type, and the middle is an italic type. So just stuff to notice really, like we're talking descenders, which is the bottom half of the P, and the ascenders, which would be like the top half of the T. A downward stem is like the long one like this. The X height, makes sense, is the height of the X in the alphabet, which obviously varies depending on the type. And the leading is from the baseline, which is the bottom of the X height, to the next bottom of the X height. So I think a lot of this terminology has been lost, to be honest, just because of digital design and how easy it is to do all this sort of stuff. So designers don't really need to know what, like the terminal, they don't really need to know what a counter is, they don't need to know all this sort of stuff. All they need to know is the kerning, the leading and the type size, just because it's a click of a button. So now we're going to move on to the space between the notes. What I mean by this, advertising created a need for new typefaces as the print and digital print became bigger. New fonts were needed. We needed bigger fonts, wider fonts, smaller fonts, and like I said before, a lot of the phrases and terminologies that were used in this back in the day for original printing that have been kept today. Leading, for example, is the actual process of putting lead bars between the type. So you'd have a block of type, a lead bar, and then a block of type. So leading, that's where leading came from. So in terms of leading, obviously leading can affect legibility, readability, and how a message is perceived and stuff like that. If it's too cramped, you can't read it. So the leading refers to baseline to baseline. As we said before, that's the bottom line of the text. And there's a couple of rules of thumb. Or back in the day when they were using actual lead, there's a couple of rules of thumb for leading. So if your type was 10 point, then you would normally have a leading of 11 point, which meant the height of your text plus 1 lead. So that's called 10 over 11. Nowadays, because it's as easy as pushing a button, these rules have been bent. So again, we're going to go on to other terminologies that are kept on. This is a French poster, I don't know if you've seen them. It's quite funny. So phrases like the kerning and tracking. This one, the numbers ones specifically, I've put in there for Chris because he is adamant that 0s, 1s and 2s are the worst kerned characters in the alphabet. If you look closely, you can see a difference, and I think the thing is, if you don't notice it, you're not notice it, but if you do notice it, it makes a massive difference to how nice the type looks, I think, which is important really. Good type goes unnoticed, and bad type, which the top line sticks out like a sore thumb, I think. So the idea of kerning is that every character should have an equal spacing between each character, between each letter. Now that sounds good in theory, but if you think of certain pairings like an A and a V, you're going to have to kern that a lot closer to give the effect, otherwise you just have a lot of negative space in there. So kerning is individual space between individual pairs and individual letters, and you've got tracking, which is the space over a word, so that's the space in between everyone. So now we're going to pose the question, what is typography? Quite choosily on here, but typography is power. So typography is the power to communicate words and ideas visually. It's timeless. I think a key thing that I enjoy about type is its pull on society and its effect that it has on society, people, and messages that it tries to communicate. I think that's a big thing that goes unnoticed. If you consider the journey that type has been on from wooden blocks to being on the side of a hill in Hollywood, then it's almost taken for granted how powerful type actually is. And it's all around us, many different forms. So after what is the typography, who handles typography is the next question. So what is a typographer? So a typographer handles typography is the next question. So a typographer is someone who is sensitive to the different forms of type, sensitive to how type conveys a message, interacts with its environment, but also affects the reader, also its effect on the reader. So this is, these are pinnacle examples really of how type can affect a society and shape society. Different examples of how it can move people, certain emotional conversations, and sometimes pioneer change, which in this Shepherd Fairy art that they did for Barack Obama, I think that was one of the key reasons it sort of, obviously, he's not going to take full credit for it, but think he deserves hats off for the artwork, to be honest, which he got sued for, but there you go. So the Brooklyn Bridge is Helvetica used by Massimo Vignelli, and we're going to hear from him again later on. And he implemented Helvetica into the subway station in New York. Now he's a bit of an odd one really, because he uses 3 fonts. He's a designer, but he uses 3 fonts and really doesn't like the idea that type is expressive. But he chose it just because of how beautiful Helvetica is really. And we've got the bottom left, which is my inspiration for today's talk. You're looking at a black polo. And Saul Bass is the man with the golden arm. He's one of my favourite graphic designers. I think all of these sort of show how they can affect the industry they're in. Saul Bass actually changed the animation and the movie industry through his expressive type and like the idents into films and acrylics and stuff like that. He's a motive and playful type, sort of really changed the game in terms of animation. So all the example that you're trying to get from this is how design can move people, and it has emotional connotations, which leads us nicely on to the crowd participation. Oh no, it doesn't. Sorry. We talk about a graphic designer from London called Neville Brody, who I really like this phrase. Typography is a hidden tool of manipulation within society. Now, it does sound pretty sinister, and the picture doesn't help. But to me, Brody is alluding to something that is paramount in typography, and that is the reader's experience. I believe that typefaces have a personality. They can be traditional, modern, romantic, serious, or it can also be emotive, personal, and remind us of the past. So that brings us nice onto a bit of crowd participation. If everyone is still awake, can anybody identify this font? I guarantee that all of you have seen this font at some point in your life.
It looks a bit like the font that Roald Dahl books have, Quentin Blake uses.
Good job. So that is right. That font is synonymous really with the Roald Dahl books, and I'm glad someone got that, because otherwise I was relying on Chris. But whenever I see that font, I automatically think of the twits and the beard and just having those stuff in it. But it sort of has an emotive effect, takes you back. So it sort of transcends what it actually is, and that is just words on a page. Now this is, I think this was rightly or wrongly recognised by David Williams. I don't know whether the book's good, but he sort of clocked onto a winning formula, I think. And it just goes to show how the type can complement A, the block colour behind, B, the sort of story and message it's saying, which is a nice kid's story, but C, also the pictures or illustrations that surround it. I think if you remove any one thing, then it wouldn't look as good as it does. And I think it's quite a savvy thing to do, because I reckon Mr. Stink wouldn't have done as well if it didn't follow that formula, because it gives the reader nostalgia and already a sense of attachment to the book. So now we've established that fonts can have a certain personality. I'm just going to take you through specifically the 5 main categories of font. Firstly, I'm going to talk to you about serif. So serif fonts were very much based on handwriting and calligraphy style. It's a calligraphy style font. That's where you get these little feet that poke out the end of every letter. They're called serifs, these little feet, and this is a bracket that brings it down. So it's nicely done. That font is Baskerville. I think. Sorry, I've just lost my point. That font is Baskerville. What's nice about that font? I've chosen this font because I like the way it's quite rounded, but also has squared off terminals, which is the end of the serif. But in terms of in terms of the examples that I've chosen, I've tried to choose modern, and so these two are more modern and show that serif font still has a place in modern society. And this one, the Bologna Festival, is 2012, but also has an air of elegance and tradition. Serif is often more legible and readable than any other font. That's why you'll see a lot of novels, a lot of big body copy is done in a serif font. Don't know why, I think it's because it's copied from calligraphy that it must just lend itself to that a bit better. So I've picked out 3 big hitters in the serif world. So Bembo was made in 1495, and this is possibly one of the oldest fonts that we still use today. It's quite an impressive, elegant font. It's quite nice. You see this in a lot of books, a lot of first edition books. So what I've done on every category that I've done, I've chosen a couple of fonts, why they're good and why they're timeless. This particular font is timeless because it's classical, it's elegant, it's got confident lines, and like all good fonts, there's a cheeky little ascender that just goes a little bit further than the ascender line. All the ones I've picked seem to have this cheeky ascender. It's just nice. It's nice. So the second one we're going to talk about is Garamond, and this is Claude Garamond or Claude Garamond. This guy on the right, and he made a name for himself in 1540 when he was commissioned by King Francis I to create a font, and this is the font he came up with, again with the cheeky ascender. So the king liked it. Yeah. So why did this last? Why has this lasted? And I believe it's because, as opposed to Bembo, looks a bit more sharp, this one's quite a nice, smooth, rounded font. And this was actually the font that we use today. We still use this font today, and the font that we use today is exactly the same as the font that they used back then. It's not changed or been edited. It was Garamond's work, which is quite impressive. The next one I'm going to talk about is Bedoni. And the reason I chose this one is because it's staggering to think this was designed in 1798. So this, originally designed in 1798, released in 1813. I made a mistake. So yeah, this was originally designed in 1798 by someone called Bedoni, surprisingly. And I think this really emphasised at the time the expressive nature of type, the really high contrast that it has between the thick stroke and the thin stroke. This one doesn't have a cheeky ascender. That is interesting. I think this stood the test of time due to its ability to portray fashion and a sense of luxury. And like I said, it was designed in 1798, but then it wasn't really until 1930 in the Art Deco era when it truly took off, really. It got a second wind, and it was implemented a lot in that sort of Art Deco fashion and design. So I think we're going to move on to sans serif. Now this was designed by, there was a type designer in the 18th century called Baskerville, an English guy that designed a font called Baskerville. And it was his third grandson that came up with the sans serif design. It didn't really take on until more recent times in the early 20th century. So these sans serif are considered, believe it or not, sans serif are considered to be less legible than serif, which is interesting because it's just the pure form of letters. I think when we were all taught how to read and write, we're taught to do it in a sans serif style. But these guys are formal, pretty friendly and modern. Obviously, it depends how it's used and the message it's saying, but in general, freedom is in peril, would look a lot scarier in a serif type, supposedly. So, again, I'm not doing this for just the two big hitting categories, really, which is serif and sans serif. I'm going to mention 3 fonts. And these are the 3 fonts that I've chosen for sans serif. Now, Futura is actually my favourite font in this presentation, I think. It's quite a nice font. It's basically based around shapes and symbols. There's a lot of circles within the counter space. There's a lot of smooth lines. A lot of fonts trying to copy fonts like Futura, but don't really get it right, I don't think. This one is based on circles, sharp points. The M at the bottom of the M goes right down to the baseline, and this little crossbar on the F comes right the way across. I think it's just a nice touch. And Wes Anderson, you might have seen Futura in all the Wes Anderson films. He's obsessed with Futura. And it was designed by Paul Renner at the time of Bauhaus, so it sort of fits in with that Bauhaus movement. He wasn't part of Bauhaus actually, but he was part of that sort of era and time, and type's becoming more expressive. Now, a bit of type banter for you. Accidents grotesque. A sans serif typeface walks into the street and is hit by a bondage truck. The carnage is grotesque. Accidents. I genuinely was laughing quite hard. So that was designed in. This is actually another amazing story. This was designed in 1896 and is over a century old, but you'd put that up there with modern looking fonts today, I think. This was designed in that Swiss design era, and is everywhere. You can't move for Helvetica. I actually don't like designing with it because I think it's cheating. I think it suits all eras, it suits everything. It's a bit of a cheat. Someone once said, I was trying to find out who came up with this quote, but I think it's a brilliant quote. And it was, Helvetica is the sweatpants of typefaces. Because you could put that on anything really. It's fantastic. So it basically dominated design for the last 50 years. It was designed by Mac Miedinger and Eduardo Hoffman. It's still amazing today and timeless really. But why is it timeless? Was the question I was trying to find out. And it's all weights as well. Often you get a lot of fonts that are nice in a couple of weights and not nice in others, but this seems to be, no matter how thick or thin it is, I think that was proven by Apple picking it up for their iOS system. And it's in all weights, it's beautiful. And I think it's all terminations of fonts, all the terminals either finish on a 90 degree, so they either finish horizontal or vertical. I think it adds a lot of geometry to it, but also there's a big curve. It doesn't come across as being angular, it's an odd one. There's a lot of, it's not actually the typeface you're looking at really, it's the negative spaces around the type that are beautiful. For example, that's a teardrop. And I think it all sort of blends together to make something that really is timeless, I think. I'm going to talk about script font, something that obviously back in the day with the scribes, when Gutenberg came across, he sort of mimics the scribes' handwriting, but I think script font has really set fire in, it's really come to the sort of mainstream in the last, I'd say 10 years maybe. And I think a lot of that's down to technological advances and digital design. It's a lot easier now for designers and artists to make their own font that I think if anyone can do it, you don't have to have the knowledge of a typesetter or a typography. If you know how to write and you know how to use a brush or whatever, you can make these fonts. And if you put a bit of attention to them, then you can really make them look good. There's a lot of good things that you don't get in serif and sans serif. Often linked characters, that's quite a nice touch. As we saw in Chris Brochures, that's a nice touch when the headers link. There's a lot of freedom to do whatever you want really. You can create fancy swirls, join ascenders and descenders. There's a lot of spicy things going on there. So I was sort of harking on about how type affects society still, and I think script fonts especially have hold weight in this argument. This Levi advert was in 1990, so they have been around for a while, but I think due to a lot of graffiti and urban and street influence in mainstream media, I think this sort of style, this sort of grungy style has really taken off. So next, we're going to talk about specialist fonts. And we heard from Neville Brody before, his doom and gloom. So we'll see if he can put his money where his mouth is. And he designed the Channel 4 typeface. So bear in mind that he set himself up for a big fall really with that quote. So let's see if he delivers.
Wednesday at 8.
Next up on Channel 4.
Monday at 10 on 4.
So I think with the monumentous task that he had ahead of him, he has to come up with a typeface that suits all Channel 4 collateral and gives across like a unique brand and a unique tone of voice. I think he really hit the nail on the head there. I think there's a lot to be said for simplicity. He's not reinvented the wheel. He's took a font and bastardised it to suit and complement the brand and whatever else it's on. You saw the different elements that sort of work with anything that it's put on top of, really, which is a big job, I can imagine, and yeah, testament to him for that one. So the last one is a bit of a joke one, really. Symbol picture fonts, often referred to as dingbats or bi fonts. And these were originally designed for mathematical equations and signings to make things easier. I think there's a lot to be said for them copying hieroglyphics in the first place. In terms of actual printing with the Gutenberg press and lithography and stuff, they were used to put like lead ornaments in and just make the pages look a little bit better. But I think we've sort of evolved into something a bit, I'm not really sure what it is, but it's like emojis sort of hark back to this sort of language. Yeah, so that's all, folks.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that. I thought it was really fascinating when I saw it the first time. I hope you maybe learned some stuff in there. There's a lot of the kind of history stuff that I didn't know anything about. Most of that kind of stuff, and just some of the phrases like serif and sans serif and stuff. I think people chuck them around all the time. Not everyone actually knows where they come from or why they are what they are, or
Yeah, I think the one that stands out for me is leading. We talk about leading, which is the space between sentences, and that actually came from blocks of lead that were used for the spacing. Yeah. I think that's really, really cool.
Good fact.
And there's loads of stuff like that you'll find out. Well, you found out.
You found out. It's to the end. You've just watched it. So yeah, that was really, really interesting. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with another What the Fox. I believe next week we're going to be talking to Joe a little bit more about social and some things like that. So we'll see you next time.
See you later.